Welcome to our deep dive into the world of Johannes Brahms. Most people know him for his symphonies and concertos, but we're going beyond the sheet music today. We'll attempt to uncover the man behind these powerful compositions. It's an intriguing challenge because he was seen as both a traditionalist and an innovator.
He held deep respect for the musical giants who came before him.
But he wasn't afraid to break new ground.
Not at all.
We're lucky to have a stack of sources, letters, anecdotes, and musical analysis.
A wealth of material
Mission.
to unearth the human experiences, the loves, losses, and quirks that shaped Brahms.
And in turn, his music. Let's begin with Chapter 1, The Making of a Maestro,
Maestro Brahms.
starting with his upbringing in Hamburg.
Born into modest circumstances, Brahms's father, a musician, instilled a love for music in him from a young age.
But it wasn't just a passion. It was a necessity. Think about this. At just 14 years old, Brahms was playing the piano in the rough-and-tumble world of Hamburg's inns to support his family.
Imagine that.
What an experience for a young musician.
A trial by fire. Imagine a teenager honing his skills amidst the lively, sometimes rowdy atmosphere of those establishments.
It's easy to imagine how this early exposure to a variety of musical styles and social settings might have shaped his approach to composition. It wasn't long before fate intervened, and he crossed paths with violinist Eduard Remenyi.
Remenyi became a sort of musical mentor, introducing Brahms to the vibrant world of Roma music, known for its passionate melodies, intricate rhythms, and improvisational spirit.
Brahms was captivated.
By this music and its emotional depth.
And we could hear these influences, can't we? Especially in pieces like the Hungarian dances where that fiery energy and rhythmic complexity shine through.
Precisely. The Hungarian dances are a wonderful example of how Brahms absorbed these external influences and then crucially transformed them into something uniquely his own.
It's a delicate balance.
It is.
Then came another pivotal encounter with Joseph Joachim, a renowned violinist.
Joachim was a true champion of Brahms' talent, recognizing his potential immediately.
He became a lifelong friend.
And advocate opening doors for Brahms that might have otherwise remained closed.
The most important of those doors was probably the introduction to Robert Schumann, another giant of the Romantic era.
Indeed. Schumann was utterly astonished by Brahms' talent. He wrote a glowing review proclaiming Brahms as the heir to Beethoven's legacy.
This launched Brahms's career.
It did, but it also placed him at the heart of a heated musical debate, the War of the Romantics.
The War of the Romantics. This was a clash of musical ideologies, wasn't it?
Essentially, on one side you had composers like Liszt and Wagner pushing the boundaries of traditional forms and championing what they called the music of the future.
And on the other side were Brahms and Schumann, deeply rooted in the classical tradition, but still pushing forward in their own way.
Exactly. Schumann's championing of Brahms as the heir to Beethoven infuriated the more radical composers. They saw it as a rejection of their progressive ideas. This created a complex landscape for Brahms to navigate. But amidst this controversy, his personal life unfolded with its own share of intrigue and complexity.
Which brings us to Chapter 2, Love, Loss, and a Fiercely Private Soul. Let's delve into Brahms's relationships, starting with the most intriguing one, his connection with Clara Schumann, Robert's wife.
Their bond was deep and multifaceted, fueled by mutual respect, artistic admiration, and some believe even romantic feelings.
The letters they exchanged over the years hint at a profound emotional connection, but the exact nature of their relationship remains the subject of much debate. Brahms was intensely private, and Clara was fiercely protective of her husband's legacy.
It's almost as if their unexpressed emotions found an outlet in their music. Brahms dedicated several compositions to Clara, and some believe his music reflects the complexities of their relationship.
There's a story that after Robert Schumann's death, Brahms rushed to be by Clara's side, and it was during this time that he composed the Piano Trio No. 1 in B major. Some musicologists see this piece as a direct outpouring of his grief and his deep affection for Clara.
It's a powerful piece full of emotional depth and dramatic shifts. Whether it's directly about Clara or not, the music speaks volumes about Brahms' ability to channel intense emotions into his compositions.
And to complicate matters further, there's the story of his failed engagement to Agathe von Siebold.
A fascinating episode that reveals a lot about Brahms' personality. He broke off the engagement quite abruptly, leading many to speculate about his capacity for romantic commitment. He seemed to value his independence and artistic freedom above all else.
He even wrote in a letter, "I couldn't bear to have in the house a woman who has the right to be kind to me, to comfort me when things go wrong." This statement speaks volumes about his inner turmoil, perhaps even a fear of vulnerability.
It's a telling quote. It reveals a deep-seated need for self-reliance and a reluctance to be emotionally dependent on another person.
His music often embodies this same tension between passion and restraint. There's a depth of emotion there, but it's often veiled, controlled by a certain formal discipline.
It's as if he channeled all of his unexpressed emotions, his vulnerabilities, his longings into his music. He found solace and release through composition in a way he couldn't in his personal life.
Perhaps this tension between passion and control is what makes Brahms's music so enduringly fascinating. It invites us to explore the complexities of human emotion. But for now, let's move away from matters of the heart.
Indeed, let's move on to chapter 3, Brahms the Perfectionist. Let's explore his professional life in Vienna,
Vienna,
the city of waltzes and grand operas.
a musical epicenter.
Here, Brahms truly blossomed as a composer and conductor,
He took on quite a demanding role,
didn't he? Leading choirs.
and eventually becoming the director of the Vienna Philharmonic.
He did, and he approached these roles with his characteristic rigor and dedication. Interestingly, Brahms wasn't afraid to program what some considered serious music from earlier composers like Bach and Beethoven, even when lighter, more popular fare was in vogue.
It suggests a strong artistic conviction, a commitment to showcasing depth and complexity regardless of trends.
It does, and this dedication extended, of course, to his own compositions. Brahms was known to be a meticulous craftsman, constantly revising and refining his work, agonizing over even the smallest details.
He once remarked, "It is not hard to compose, but what is awfully hard is to let the superfluous notes fall under the table." It seems that for Brahms, true artistry meant a relentless pursuit of perfection, a process of chiseling away at his creations until only the most essential elements remained.
His first symphony exemplifies this. He labored over it for more than 20 years, constantly revising and reworking it until he felt it was ready for the world to hear.
It's extraordinary the level of self-critique he applied to his work.
It's almost paradoxical. Here is a man who achieved immense success, financial security, and the respect of his peers. Yet he still battled with self-doubt and an unrelenting drive to push himself further.
It underscores the point that even the most celebrated artists are often their own harshest critics.
This constant striving for perfection, this wrestling with his inner critic, perhaps fueled his creative fire and ultimately led to the creation of such enduring masterpieces.
Perhaps this period of intense professional activity in some ways mirrored his emotional restraint in his personal life.
This leads us to chapter 4.
Late life triumphs and unexpected inspiration. After stepping down from his conducting duties, he entered a particularly prolific phase of composition.
Indeed. Freed from the demands of conducting, Brahms could devote himself entirely to composing. It was during these later years that some of his most beloved works emerged, including the double concerto, the piano trio No. 3, and the violin sonata in D minor, all composed within a remarkably short span of time.
There's a perceptible shift in these late works, isn't there? A depth of emotion and maturity, a sense of peace that wasn't quite as prominent in his earlier compositions.
I agree. There's a sense of reflection of coming to terms with life's complexities that permeates these pieces. The double concerto, for example, is scored for violin and cello, two instruments engaging in a musical dialogue.
At times harmonious, at other times fraught with tension.
A musical conversation reflecting perhaps his own complex relationships with those he loved.
Some scholars believe it reflects his relationship with Clara Schumann, a relationship marked by both deep affection and an inability to fully express those feelings.
It's an intriguing interpretation, isn't it? How personal experiences might manifest in abstract musical forms.
Absolutely. And speaking of relationships, there's the charming story behind his clarinet pieces. He wrote them specifically for Richard Mühlfeld, a clarinetist he admired.
It speaks to Brahms's capacity for admiration and affection, despite his often guarded nature. The clarinet pieces, the trio, the quintet, and the two sonatas are regarded as some of the finest works ever written for the instrument.
Brahms expanded the clarinet repertoire, introducing a richness and depth that hadn't been fully explored before. It's remarkable how he could innovate within the confines of tradition, pushing boundaries while respecting the inherent beauty of the instrument.
He had a deep understanding of the clarinet's unique qualities, its expressive range, its capacity for both lyricism and drama. These pieces are a testament to his masterful ability to bring out the best in the instrument.
Then there are the Wir Ernste Gesang, 4 serious songs, a profoundly moving work for bass, voice, and piano that grapples with themes of mortality, loss, and the transient nature of life. These songs were composed towards the end of his life after the death of Clara Schumann.
They are incredibly poignant, especially considering the context in which they were written. There's a sense of acceptance, even resignation, that is both heartbreaking and strangely comforting.
Brahms was also facing his own mortality at this time. Diagnosed with liver cancer, his final years were marked by physical suffering and increasing weakness. Yet his creative spirit persevered.
It's almost as if he poured every ounce of his remaining energy into these late works, leaving behind a final testament to his genius and his understanding of the human condition.
His music, from his youthful compositions to his final masterpieces, is a reflection of the man himself. Complex, passionate, reserved, and ultimately deeply human. It seems that as his life was nearing its end, he found a certain freedom in his creative expression. We've explored Brahms's personality, his influences, the joys and sorrows that shaped his life. But what about the music itself? What distinguishes a Brahms symphony from, say, a Beethoven symphony?
That's where it gets especially captivating.
For those of us who delve into the intricacies of music.
Brahms was a master of form and structure. He took the traditional sonata form, the cornerstone of classical music, and expanded it, reshaped it.
Made it his own.
Precisely.
So it wasn't simply about crafting beautiful melodies.
Not at all. Brahms's music is incredibly layered, interwoven with counterpoint, intricate rhythms.
A rich tapestry of melodies.
It is. He was meticulous in his attention to detail, always striving for a sense of balance and unity in his compositions.
It brings to mind his relentless pursuit of perfection.
His agonizing over every note.
It wasn't solely about expressing emotions. It was also about achieving a level of intellectual rigor.
Precisely. Brahms was a deeply intellectual composer. He immersed himself in the works of Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, and earlier masters, absorbing their techniques and integrating them into his own distinct style.
It seems he walked a tightrope between honoring tradition and forging his own path.
He did, and that's what makes him so compelling. He embraced the past without fear, yet he also wasn't afraid to experiment, to push the boundaries of what was considered acceptable in his time.
I'm beginning to understand why he's considered one of the greats. His music wasn't merely about pleasing the ear. It was about engaging the listener intellectually and emotionally, provoking thought and stirring profound feelings.
That's the hallmark of a truly great composer, wouldn't you say?
To create music that transcends time, that speaks to something universal within us, Brahms' music possesses that power.
It's music that you can revisit time and again, and each time you uncover new layers, hidden depths, nuances you hadn't noticed before.
You've certainly inspired me to revisit Brahms' music.
I hope so.
Before we conclude our deep dive, is there a final thought, a particular lens through which we might appreciate his work even more?
I would invite you to consider what draws you to Brahms' music. Is it the technical brilliance, the emotional depth, the sense of grandeur, or something else entirely? The most rewarding aspect of listening to Brahms or any great composer is finding your own personal connection to the music.
It's a beautiful reminder that music is more than just a collection of notes. It's a bridge between souls, a conversation that transcends time and language. Perhaps Brahms' own reserved nature allows us to find ourselves in the spaces between the notes, in the unspoken emotions that his music so eloquently conveys. We leave you with this question. What unspoken emotions do you hear in Brahms' music? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Johannes Brahms.